Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Why the Last Man. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with Hero and Sam's side of things. Obviously, Hero's just like, let's just take a break. Fact of the matter is, rest our feet. And it's like, we're in this house that's in perfectly good condition. Even Sam's like, there's no dead bodies here. We should be suspicious of that. But Hero's like, it's fine. I'm like, that is kind of like the house being in the pristine condition that it is. Doesn't seem like it's been raided and there's no dead bodies. That should have been a key sign. Like, Sam was like, but Hero's so lackadaisical about it. She's just too chalant about it, or rather, that's kind of the same thing, but it's like, the fact is, you can tell immediately she's just making excuses because she doesn't want to go, especially when Sam finds a car in the garage. Which, that was a pretty interesting car and everything, but the fact is that it's like, we could get there in a day or whatever, and it's like, she's like, no, come on, I need time to prepare. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's the thing of what did your mom do that was so bad? Even when what she tells Sam this episode, I'm like, is that even the truth? Even if it is, not saying she's lying, but is that all there is to it? The fact is you're avoiding your mom, it is kind of a thing of it's the literal apocalypse. Shouldn't you make more of an attempt to be around your mom? But I guess it's also she never really wanted the whole her family being who her family is, but it's she has zero. I guess for her it's my dad's dead, my brother's dead, and so at the end she thinks her brother's gone, so it's there's no one between me and my mom anymore, so it's just going to be us, and it's just I don't want to deal with that. Because she explains her mom knows about Mike, because she opened up to Sam about, I was with Mike when it happened. It's well, at the very least you can tell he died happy, there's that, and you can see her lips she's trying to wondering, she's thinking about telling Sam, but she kind of bites her lip because she's scared to admit it, because the moment you tell Sam, there's no going back, because it's once again, you could justify it by being Mike's dead, this illness killed him. It's when in actuality you accidentally killed him before him. Is she going to ever open up to anyone about that? Because I think that's what's eating away at her the most, is because she opened up to Sam about the fact is that her mom, she told her mom about Mike, and I think it's she's always suffered her mom's judgment and stuff like that. So I think that's what that kind of stems from. But essentially, it's a situation of destroying someone else's life, even going as far as calling her selfish, self-destructive, and cruel. Now, I'm wondering, is that Jennifer having that particular perspective because we never found out? You can imply maybe what was going on with her own marriage, so maybe that's what was happening. I'm wondering how much did the kids know? Because I feel that might be why Jennifer had the perspective she did, because it's her husband cheated on her, had an affair, she wanted to take him back and everything, but maybe that's why she had even, it's just kind of because I guess also the worst thing you can do is be a homewrecker, especially because their family is already in the spotlight, her being a councilwoman and everything, so their family has to be a little bit better than everyone else in a weird degree, in a weird circumstance. So I think that's kind of where she was coming from. We have to be a little above board, and doing that's terrible, and it feels her saying that probably has to come from someplace personal. Even Sam was geez, that sucks, but I'm is that the only reason why? Because she even said her mom was she's the moment I show up, my mom will know. And I think it's specifically because her mom will know that there's something else, and eventually she'll have to confess to her mom what she did. And I think that's maybe what she's mainly concerned about. I'm why else would you avoid? And even to the point that I'm you basically proved your mom's point of how selfish, self-destructive, and cruel you can be. Sam had his hopes up, and the moment he was asleep, you broke the car. It's do you not see the irony behind you literally telling Sam that about your mom saying that stuff about you, and you immediately proving her point? I'm what is so, other than that, I'm your mom might be judgmental and stuff like that, but this is a time where everyone needs to come together. But like I said, maybe she's just never been one to take her mom's handouts and privileges. Her brother took advantage of it, but maybe she always kind of rebelled against that. And so even under these circumstances, no one else is having that, doesn't have that advantage. So I'm not going to be someone partaking upon it, partaking upon it just because it's the end of the world. I don't know. like I said, I think there's a lot of contributing factors, but I'm like, it is kind of messed up. Your buddy is asking you to take him there for, you know, what he's going through. He's like, I need a place where I can get some testosterone. Kind of already know what I'm dealing with at this time and stuff, like, you know, so it is kind of messed up. But then, like, they go on foot, they're checking a nearby place and run into Mac. And I was like, hey, so that means Nora's nearby. But at first I was like, oh, I guess Nora... It gets found out later on in the episode because Nora's like, okay, don't tell him who your mom is. And it's like, what? It's like, I know, I worked at the White House, so I know who your mom is, Karen. So it's like, yeah, like... I guess she never she always stayed separated from that, so she probably never got to know a lot of the in-house people, so she probably never got to really know Nora, but like, of course Nora would know her. It's like, she probably did her own research on Jennifer and stuff like that. So a lot of people like had probably because Hero was probably away from the spotlight. Yurik was probably as well. There might be like some photo op stuff here and there of them, but it's probably generally they were kept away from the spotlight. But Nora being like, oh, like looking up anyone that ever talked crap about Ted, she probably like found out about the family. So that's why she probably knew even more so. I mean, they might have popped into the like I said, some like official stuff, like whenever Jennifer had to do something, the kids will pop up, some whatever the case may be. It's just generally most people probably wouldn't recognize her as like, oh, you're so-and-so's kid or something, especially now that she's the president. Like, luckily that worked out in her favor. But because when they met, she was like, yeah, I'm Karen and this is, what was it? God, what was the other name? It was, she gave Sam a name based on that story she told earlier about like a horse riding coach and stuff like that. Because it's the title of the episode. But I thought it was interesting because Nora was like, yeah, my name's Nora. And then they're like, yeah, we're not our names. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, why, you know, I mean, but it makes sense why you want to keep your identity secret. So it makes a lot of sense. But, so I'm surprised, I think this speaks volumes too of just like, once again, it's kind of like, you're kind of a bad person, aren't you, Hero? The fact is that like, right, Nora opened up about their circumstances and it's like, yeah, like, cause, she checked on Mac and they were able to treat it as much as they could, but she still needs antibodies. And so like the closest place would be like, they had just left DC, the closest place would be Baltimore. Like it'd take a long time on foot cause I'm guessing the car ran out of gas like a while back, but so it is kind of selfish that like she's not like, oh, because I think it would, because if she were to say like, hey, maybe we can try and fix the car, you would at least be like, hey, Nora, do you know anything about cars? Maybe you could try and fix the car. Or whatever she did was so, like, she made sure that whatever she did was so damaging the car couldn't be repaired. So it's like, so maybe that's what it, but because I was about to say, like, you're not even offering that. Like, I thought what was going to happen is her being, like, feeling so guilty about it. And it's like, you know what? This little girl needs help. All right, I'll fix the car. And then Sam will be pissed at her, but at the very least, they would have the car now and they could go. But I think it's that you're still so adamant about not seeing your mom, you wouldn't even throw that out as an option. But I think it is also probably, like, she probably cut some wires. There's probably, like, broke some pieces, cut some wires, so like there's no like just getting that started easily. Like pieces had to be replaced, type of thing. So we didn't get to see what kind of damage she did to the car, but yeah. So maybe that's even more reason. But it's like, yeah, your selfishness kind of backfires even more so. But I mean, it's like, hey, luckily you were there to meet Nora and take care of Mac. Because I had a feeling, like, I was like, oh, they're going to run into each other, aren't they? Like, it would make sense out of any characters that they would run into each other, but Nora with Hero and Sam. But it's like, if she wasn't selfish, then, like, they would have already left, so they couldn't have been there to help Nora and Mac. But it's also like, if also you weren't selfish and you made an excuse just to stay anyway, but it's like, maybe you could have also ran into them. You know, there's a lot, because that could have been a place they decided to check out before they left, you know? But it's like I said, you just kind of look at Hero like, really, what are you doing, you know? It's like, I want to give you somewhat of the benefit of the doubt. That's why I feel like there's got to be more to this stuff with your mom. Like I said, maybe there's some level of like, yeah, she'll end up finding out like I'm hiding something and eventually be able to figure out that I killed Mike and I'm already living with it enough. I don't need my mom's judgments about, you know, so we'll see. But sadly, the place, well, before we even get to, I was about to bring up the ladies they run into. She does lay down with Sam and then she starts touching his chest. I was like, are you about to make moves on your buddy? And it's like, yeah, okay, I guess so. But then like Sam's kind of like, whoa, like I think it's maybe because maybe because of the testosterone situation currently, and he's not feeling like, maybe it's just because it's a weird thing, because it's hard to say like, are you only cuddling up to me because like I'm the closest thing to a man in this world? I am a man, so like, but like maybe that's what made Sam feel a little weird, because like we're friends and you never looked at me like that, but now you are, just because there's no one else around. Like maybe Sam always had a thing for Hero, but it was always like, oh, like, you know, she never saw Sam in that way for whatever reason. So I don't know. Like I kind of lean towards probably the testosterone situation makes him feel a little like unsure of himself currently. Like, right, like I just want to feel as like probably as masculine as I can at the time, or like as much of a man as I can at the time, like if anything were to happen between us. Or maybe it's just like, maybe like Sam's just never been with anyone since transitioning or something, you know, questions like that. But Sam did ask, what happened to the car? Oh, she made sure not to say anything at that point. Just, let me nestle back in and just pretend like I'll go to sleep. It's like, yeah, because Sam knew on some level that she did something to the car. It's just like, oh, it's too much of a coincidence. It was working fine. Then all of a sudden, like, you want to stay here. And then the next morning, oh, it's busted. Yeah. But some ladies rolled up on some horses, and like, obviously it's the whole thing of like, oh, like, I can't believe you would want to like be a, like, make yourself look like a man. And Sam's like, I am a man. And it's like, all the men are dead, sweetie. It's like, why the hell are you judging Sam for that? It's like, because it's like, judging Sam for a situation that was like, because at first I was like, are you saying that because of the current circumstances? I think it's like, no, you already had that belief beforehand. I think that's what that's sprinkled in there. It's not like like you were like this before the end of the world, so it's fine. It's like, no. It's more so like, oh, it might be a combination, but that seemed like some like prior to the world ending type of like, I can't believe you would want to, like, you make, you know, it's like, why would you want to make yourself a man? Like, it seemed like that type of like, it had that type of spice and resentment like spewed on top of it. You know, maybe that's me reading too much into it, because I was like, why the hell is that your damn problem? Like, why is that such an issue? Like, Sam can do whatever the hell he wants, you know? But, you know, so I was curious about that. But they were like ready to pop everyone until Nora was like, yo, she's a doctor. Let her check out your buddy. Your buddy's hurt, right? And so they take her there, and like they're being suspicious about like her circumstances, like, oh, how she got hurt and stuff like that. So Hero does her thing. And I was also wondering like why they were so like, oh, don't let Sam near. Like, I was like, why do you have such a beef? And I'm like, is it like some religious thing of like, you think that Sam's kind of like, that's why I'm like, are they like looking at Sam and like, oh, you're not something of God's creation or something like that? Like, I'm curious, like, because that sound like there was some hateful like elements. That's why I'm like getting a feeling like, oh, like Sam doesn't fit with what you'd consider traditional. That's why I'm like, there's definitely something there, especially when especially they were like, oh, like, hold on to this, it's Joseph. I was like, Joseph? I was like, am I getting some, I know nothing about the Mormon religion, but I was like, are we getting some Mormon vibes here? I was like, are they all like sister wives type of situation? It's like, oh, when Roxanne gets back in and Roxanne shows up and whispers something to Nora and then kills the person that was on the table. And it's like, the other one's outspoken, like, why would you do that? It's like, she's not a doll for you to put down. It's like, I showed her some damn mercy. Like, what were you doing? And then also when she found out, like, wait, you're treating all of them bad? You basically brought them here under duress and you threatened them, and this is how you treat them and stuff like that, and they're willing to help us? You know? Home girl, like, shut down quick, because no one had her back. Everyone else was just kind of like, because Roxanne runs stuff. So I guess, like, that's why I'm like, I'm kind of getting a little, I'm like, are we getting, like, religious cult vibes? I'm like, if we get another cult, I'm like, dude, cults are up the wazoo now. Because I talked about it recently in something, what was I watching recently? That I talked about there being cults, and I thought that was kind of wild. Oh, Chapelwaite. You know, there's like a cult sort of in that. So I was like, man, there are cults up in everything. So I was like, I mean, considering Apocalypse seems like the best time for cults to kind of start popping up. So that's why I'm wondering, like, is there some, like, is it just a religious group? I'm actually, like, considering the supplies that they have later on, I think they're more so like a militia, but they could be kind of cult-like. I mean, which militias in their own right can be kind of cult-esque anyway. So, like, they kind of have that, their ideologies and stuff like that. So, but they can be very, like, cult-like in their own regard. So I'm wondering, like, because we have in the previous episode, her talks about militias rising up. The fact is they have like such a large supply and stuff like that willing to help out and everything. That's why I'm like, that's probably why they're all about like helping Sam and Hero. It's like, right, like these could be more sisters to join the cause. But even more reason why Nora was like, don't tell them who your mom is, because she must know that they are a militia group. So that solidifies it a little bit more. But I'm wondering, like, even beyond just a militia group, is there some religious angle to this? Is there some like something else on top of it, like adding fuel to that fire? We'll have to wait and see. But other than that, on the other side of this episode, we've had Sarah, or 355, and Yorick. And it was interesting because Sarah was kind of like freaking like daydreaming, almost like or sleepwalking almost, and she almost walked off a cliff because we saw a memory, and it's like, was that memory pre or post her joining CR? Like, because like, was that her on a mission, or was that her with like the person she cared about? Because we see like it cuts to like headlights kind of flashing in her face, and I'm like, was it like an accident that took that person away? Was it like someone that was very important to you, and did you eventually sign up to CR because you had nothing left? Or was that part of your job? Was that someone getting back at you for you crossing them because they tracked you down? Like, I don't know. Because she brings up the fact is that she doesn't have a name. Because it's like, yeah, Sarah's like, my real name is like, what is it? You can call me 355. It's like, you got to have her like, but she's like super like, no, like, I'm not telling you my name. Like, I think it's kind of almost like a superhero thing of like, your identity's meant to be kept safe. Because her line of work, you make a lot of enemies. But it also shifts into the whole point of you're supposed to be like a chameleon, like shedding like identities like it's nobody's business. Like, you're not supposed to be held to like one identity, like just being referred to as a number is just kind of like it's part of the job. Which obviously, like, Sarah talks nothing about herself at all, even to the point Yurik's like, my mom told me you're part of like a super spy group, but yada yada yada, so and so forth. So I also love the whole bit when she's like, well, the fact is that she's like running around, and he's like, whoa, are you like running around and stuff like that? It's because I think she's doing everything possible not to sleep. Well, for one, always have to be on guard because he's that important. Two, I think she's afraid to go to sleep because like, oh, the last time she went to sleep, she nearly like walked off a cliff's edge. And the fact is that she's like, can't really trust herself right now. So maybe there's something deeper there going on. I don't know. Maybe her current circumstances have got her like, thinking about the past a lot. So she's offering to wash clothes, which I love. Yurik's kind of making an excuse, and he's like, turn around, and she's like, really? He's like, yeah, I don't want you to kind of, you got to stay on mission, and I don't want you to get distracted with sexy thoughts. She's like, I don't see that happening. And so she's offering to wash his clothes, but while she's washing them, because she's about to kill a rabbit, which immediately seeing that, I was like, oh, it makes me think of like the quote unquote meme related to The Last of Us and a rabbit. That's all I'm gonna say. That immediately comes to my mind now. But then, like, some ladies were raiding the camp and stuff like that. Luckily, Yurik had hidden himself ahead of time, knew, like, oh, yeah, like, being a man out here, like, I better hide. Like, it's too. So, and it's like, yeah, luckily, because he did that, Sarah's like, yo, it's just me and my sister out here. And it's like, do you have a dog? Do you have any? It's like, no, we don't have anything. It's like, and then they quote like Anne Frank about like, it's better to give or something like that. And I even love Yorick comes out of nowhere and kind of scares the crap out of him. Mainly because he didn't want Sarah to have to kill them. And I love that he's like, can't believe they seriously quoted Anne Frank. That's disgusting. It's like under these circumstances as they're trying to rob us, got the nerve to like, quote Anne Frank in that regard. I thought was so interesting. But obviously it's like, yeah, he's like, I didn't want to add more body counts. And she was like, you have something to say? He was like, no, you told me to be quiet, so I'm gonna be quiet. It's like, yeah, he knows, like he saw it in her eyes, like you saw it in his eyes at the very least last episode, where he was like, when the plane went down, she's like, no, we keep moving forward. He's like, you had something to do with it. It was already solidified in his mind. But because it's like, right, you need to be better covered up because that could have easily gone sideways. Like, they could have saw who you were. He's like, I didn't. Like, obviously, he's like, this is too important. So, luckily, they go to a nearby market. And they say, like, that place is being looked after by the Stades' wives. So, it's like, as in, like, Stades as in, like, state troopers. Because it's like, are they cops? And she says Stades. So, that's what I chalked that up to. Like, because I was... Yeah, I think that could... It's like, yeah, it's like the wives of state troopers as well as their children have kind of picked up those mantles. I mean, it makes sense. To those that might not have already been state troopers, but also like the wives of like, yeah, like my husband was one, so I'm fulfilling that role, so I know all there is to know about like that cop walk and that cop talk. So luckily, I love that Sarah was able to bargain for like a bike because all it took is like, yeah, like, oh, this generator, and toss it in this grenade. It's like, I figure we could come to a settlement. But then you have Yurik thinking he sees Beth, which really quickly, I love that he had to explain to Sarah. He's like, oh, no, it's not porn or something. It's just my girlfriend, Beth. But he's so obsessed with trying to find Beth that it's like, I get it. You want to reunite with people you care about in the apocalypse, especially because she's your fiance, even though she didn't accept your proposal. And you guys, it's even more so because, like, right, you ended up on, like, the worst, like, things went super sideways after you two had your big fight. So it's like, of course, you're going to want to, like, fix things. But that's also the thing of, like, you can draw those comparisons to, like, Sarah and, not Sarah, but Yorick and Hero. That's like, oh, you guys both of you come off a little selfish. And Sarah even calls him out for it later on because he was so busy looking for Beth, he found himself in a situation. So he tried, and he did a smart thing. He tried not to talk either. He was like, because she's like, are you a mute or something? He's like, and then she's like, take off the mask, and he's just kind of like, no, he's not trying to say anything. And it's just like, I don't want any trouble. And they take off the mask, and they're looking like, he's like, hey, I need some tea. I'm looking for some tea, testosterone. I'm like, lie your ass off, dude. It's like, it's not that wild because we're literally dealing with a similar story in this case. So it's like, yeah, like, all you have to do is, like, if someone does discover it, but it is, but for them, it's like, the fact is, they didn't even give him a chance to be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be here, I'm a go. It's like, they went straight to, like, let's beat your ass with a baton. Like, yo. I mean, to be fair, everyone's on edge. They're thinking he's trying to steal stuff. Luckily, Sarah came up, whooped some ass, and they were able to get away. But I also thought was interesting because one of the cops, she was like, shoot them. And then, like, I think she was hesitant to shoot York because it's like, he might be a guy. So, like, because it's not just about, like, repopulating Earth. It's like, oh, he's worth something. He's like, that's what it comes down to in this world of, like, oh, something that can be traded. So, that came up beforehand. So that's all that really matters in this regard. Like, I'm sure no one's thinking about, like, saving the rest of the world. It's like, they can do whatever the hell they want with him. I don't care, but I could get a good price off of him. Poor lady that ended up selling Sarah the bike ended up getting shot. It looked like in the shoulder, so hopefully she can get some medical attention. But and I think it speaks volumes. Sarah didn't go for the kills because Yurik was all about, like, let's set some ground rules. Let's not do any more killing. So she shot the lady in the leg. So I think that speaks volumes. But when her and Yurik got away, he's like, damn it, I got to go back for my phone. Which I'd agree with Sarah. Are you stupid? After everything, you want us to go back for your... No, idiot. Like, she's almost like, are you so stupid that you don't realize the gravity of the situation? It's like, I get it. You've never had to really fight for anything in your life. And I think Sarah's speaking from personal experience of having to fight for everything in her life. You were able to just to be in these rooms without having to do anything, having your family be there for you. Now that you are the most important person in the world, you're not acting like it. You're not acting like how important this is. Like, why can't you get that through your thick head that you are literally the most important person in the world, and you're still being kind of a selfish prick in it. But for him, it's like the most upsetting thing. It's like, right, just like those pilots, wrong place, wrong time, right? And he's like, and that's on me. Like, that's what bothers him the most, is because it's not necessarily that Sarah did it, which bothers him, but it's like knowing she did it for him, because of him. It's like those pilots knew what was, and it's like, we can't take the chance they might utter these words to someone else. Because earlier, it's like, right, won't people come looking for the helicopters? It's like, we don't have to worry about it. They'll just assume that both of those pilots separately stole a helicopter. Like, either Sarah thought that far in advance, or she, like, thought about it after the fact. I think she probably thought about it beforehand. It's luckily that there are two pilots, so that she can make it, like, fall on their shoulders. But that's why you could tell the look on Yurik's face even more so at that time. Like, yeah, he knew, and it comes up like, yeah, I know. It's like, but it's on me. Like, you kill them to protect my secret, and it's just like, he just doesn't want there to be more death because of him. And he's like, he gets and understands everything that's going on. He understands that, but it still doesn't. It's like he's trying to deflect. He's trying to, like, he's trying not to focus on it. It's like the world's already bad enough. He misses his girlfriend. I mean, he can't be near his mom. He can't be near his sister. And just like he's in this situation of like, yeah, you're on a mission to try and save the world. It's like, but I'm just some regular dude. Like he made it clear last episode. Like, it should be someone else. It should have been someone else because anyone else would have been a better choice. I'm not the guy. I'm not that guy, But later on when they take off and obviously they're sitting around the fire, like they bond a little because Sarah's like, here, show me a card trick. He's like, nah, that's kind of beneath me. He's like, all right, fine. And when he does the thing, I won't lie to you, I was like, yo, this guy's good. This guy's good. I'm a sucker for magic. Like it's like the same thing with like TV and movie magic. I never want to know the tricks. So like when he did that card trick thing, I was like, oh, when she was like, oh, that's not my card, I was like, oh, are you going to be so terrible at it? You're like, oh, is it your card? But it's like, no, it's part of the ploy. I was like, yo, like I said, guy's good. I really like that. So, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna do another one. And she's like, yeah, just don't cheat this time. He's like, no, I didn't cheat last time. But yeah, they're able to kind of put stuff aside in that moment because it's like, right, they kind of both have been saying what's kind of been bubbling beneath them for a while. But at the end of the day, Sarah's like, all right, the moment we'll hit Boston soon, and when we do afterwards, after all the tests and stuff are done, I'm gonna help you find your girlfriend. So I think that means a lot to because I think for Yorick it's just a thing of like, right, like I just want to be kind of seen, in my opinion, matter. So it's like, right, I shouldn't have done what I did. I got turned around and stuff like that. So, but it is the thing of like, he realizes that he is kind of selfish and it is kind of, but it's like, right, he is trying to step up and be like, right, I recognize like I am important and I need to kind of, a lot of what Sarah said has to be put in consideration because it's like, right, we were only in those circumstances because of me. Because he was saying like, right, maybe you don't have to go full blown Rambo in every situation. It's like, to be fair, they were going to kick your ass and who knows what they would have done with you afterwards. So it's like, you were too important for you to slip through Sarah's fingers. So like, it's understandable. And I think he understands that, all as well. So a lot of really, really interesting things. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.